We're about to find out if it works because you can share it. Okay, so it says we're live.
Okay.
And I'm going to confirm that we are. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning, wherever you might be watching from. Bear with us while I make sure that this is actually, yeah, we are live.
Awesome.
So, hey, this was really impromptu. Thank you for all of you who are joining us live and for those of you who will watch later. Today, we're going to have really impromptu conversation on The Reckoning, which was an interesting title in and of itself. And some of you may know this as the latest documentary on, I'm going to call him Sean Combs because he has too many names for me. You guys may know him as Diddy, Puff Daddy. What was the last one? Something Love?
Oh my God. It was just love.
So, or was it just love? Yeah, y'all feel free to put whatever you need to in the chat. Let's all have this conversation together. So you guys know me. Some of you may know me. My name is Aya Fabaranelli, and I am an attorney, although I'm coming at this not just as an attorney, but just as a woman and as a Black woman and as a mother of both sons and daughters, living in a world where I would like all of us to be safe. And this is a conversation with my beautiful sister, Dr. Michelle E. Watkins. Michelle, you want to share a little bit about your background? And she's taught the hip hop classes, all of that. But go ahead and tell the people who you are.
So first and foremost, I'm a theologian. I'm what we would describe as a womanist theologian, which means that I think about God. I think about God talk in the way that we integrate God into our lives from the perspectives, privileging the perspectives of Black women and Africana women, African women, wherever you find them. And so I'm always thinking about, the ways that we survive, improve the quality of our lives, and liberation. And much of that involves cultural criticism and thinking about Sean Combs and his many iterations and his impact on the lives of Black women in their communities. So that's the perspective I'll be coming from this evening.
Awesome. So I was not going to watch this documentary just because I try to manage my energy and I really want to spend my time and my energy on things that are liberatory, that are uplifting, that, help build better community. Mm-hmm. However, I also understand that burying your head in the sand and not knowing what's going on can also be very harmful, right? There's no neutrality. When there's evil, people need to know about it, people need to speak about it. And so on many different platforms, my goal is to bring forth knowledge, information that helps to enlighten us so that we can make different choices. And so, like I said, I wasn't going to watch this. And then I saw your post on Facebook and I was like, I got time. I don't want to do it. And then another friend of mine posted, and then I'm starting to see all these commentaries from people. And I said, okay, Aya. So I guess a couple of nights ago while I was working on some other things, I just had it playing in the background, but not necessarily watching. But then there were so many times when I had to stop what I was doing and go look at the screen and like, what? You said, what, rewind, And so I haven't really followed his career. Of course, I do know of some music, and there's probably some music I know of that I didn't know he was involved in. Did not watch his, what's it called? The reality series, Making the Band and all these other things. I think my first the first time I can remember knowing about him, which is probably later than most people, was when Biggie died. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And of course, he came out with the video, the song using Sting's music, which I understand Sting makes a lot of money from. But anyway, let me stop there. So you watched the documentary. What was your initial impression, and what has been your history with all the iterations of Sean Combs?
Um, you know, so let me just say, so I'm an 84 baby, which
Okay.
means, you know, and I've
So she really is a baby because I'm way older.
so and a Midwesterner, you know, born and raised in Chicago. And so while I've appreciated and a part of my shaping and formation has been through hip hop culture, I really personally didn't pay too much attention to Sean Combs until the East West Coast beef, because I was a diehard Tupac fan. Okay.
I was a diehard Tupac fan. I was in New York when Tupac passed away, and man, that was hard. But carry on.
So I mean, and in Chicago, we love good music, we love hip hop. So there's, you know, so we appreciated Biggie, you know, Notorious B.I.G. as an artist, you know, as a lyricist, you know, that he was very genuine and talented and gifted. At the same time, um, you know, I personally wasn't, you know, I got into Sean Combs as much as he was in the videos of, you know, Notorious B.I.G. or, you know, in the videos of Total, you know, who I loved.
Yes.
You know, so yeah, so I mean, I really didn't care that much I didn't think two or three times about him until the West and East Coast beef. And so I was a bit biased. So I will just share that, you know, that a part of my consciousness of him was shaped through, you know, my kind of my loyalty as a fan, you know, of Tupac Shakur. And then it evolved, you know, as I had to do some deep diving as a scholar and taking religion and culture seriously and making sure my students in intro classes weren't going to sleep on me. And so I created a religion and hip hop class very much modeled after Dr. Penn, Anthony Penn down at Rice, but with my own flavor. And so, you know, as a theologian, I had to think about Tupac's God talk, right? In the midst of his own anger and shenanigans with existential experiences.
Let's say it. Yes.
You know, so you know, Biggie and Sean Combs were a part of, you know, by that time, you know, his target, you know, audience in terms of thinking about who was culpable, who was responsible for organizing the assaults against him, at Quad City music studios. So I had to take a different, you know, perspective and do a deeper dive. And so when I watched the documentary, I was not surprised at all about much of what I heard. There were a couple of things. Couple of things that struck me. I didn't know about the Jake Robles murder and the connection between that was the precipitating event that started the whole East Coast West Coast.
Okay, you want to share a little bit with the viewers or listeners in case they don't know what you're talking about with that one?
Well, yeah, so I can't remember which episode it was, but one of the things I do appreciate about the documentary is that it brought a lot of things home in different parts of um, um, Sean Combs in terms of personality, in terms of history, in terms of his family, but also his interactions and his particular activities and serving as a catalyst, allegedly, a catalyst in driving the
allegedly. Very important that we say allegedly.
Yes, because this is, you know, this is very much you know, uh, you know, I'm gonna say hearsay, but all because of the many, interviews and testimonies. But what I also appreciate is that they're also tied to receipts. They're tied to, as we have become a growing culture that records everything, and we can go live. You know what I mean? Now, 20 years later, we can go live, with our devices. Um, and so much of his animosity, but we don't get to see, and this is why it is alleged. We don't know his private conversations that he was having with the Notorious B.I.G. About Tupac, about Suge Knight, about the beef. Only thing we know is what has been recorded and what has been shared, and secondhand, right? So what I mean in terms of doing a deep dive about the Jake Robles incident. So there's a part, I can't remember which episode, where it features largely being told by Kirk, one of Sean Combs's very close friends, but also who worked in one of the original shareholders of Bad Boy Records, who was organizing Biggie's schedule, during the time of his death and murder, and during the whole East Coast, West Coast beef. He mentioned and talked about Jake Robles, who was a friend of Suge Knight, and that they were there at a club that Suge Knight owned. I'm losing the name of the club. It was three numbers, 229, 226, I can't remember. Anyway, but that was there was some words that were shared between Suge's crew and including Jake Robles and Sean Combs, and his entourage. And the next thing that they knew, someone came in, an unidentified male, and shot Jake Robles multiple times in front of everybody else, and then fled. And during that particular time, that was confirmation. That was what Kirk shared, was the definitive event that he pinpointed at when the East Coast West Coast beef grew arms and legs and became a violent.
That escalated it.
But that there was existing, tensions, so that was something like new information, that had been shared. There was a lot that was missing. So it was also very clear that while I personally, as a Black woman who we need to be putting on blast, folks who have injured not only hip hop, not only culture, but who have sought, the victimization of mainly us. He wasn't trafficking. It's not too many white girls, okay, that are part of the civil cases that are against him. We didn't see a lot of testimony outside of persons in our own race and ethnic group. So I don't have no problems with how 50 deployed his executive production to codify information that had already been out there, and much that had already been verified or at least corroborated through investigative journalism. And so I do want to shout out Cheyenne Roundtree, Chicago sister, who has done a lot of work in tracing, Puff Sean Combs's trajectory of violence and intimidation from his Howard days, onto.
Okay. Yeah. So speak on it, because you're a Howard alum.
I am.
Okay, so what is this stampede? What in the world happened at Howard?
Oh, so I mean, I'm talking about
because I've heard allegedly there was a girlfriend or someone at Howard who may have been one of the first victims of Sean Combs.
So this is prior to the stampede event that's associated with Sean Combs. We're talking like 89, 90. So allegedly, Okay, so Cheyenne Roundtree, she had interviewed a number of um, Howard alum who were classmates of Sean Combs during the time of this alleged incident. And so this is a good 2 years before the whole celebrity, basketball game stampede incident. But it was one where he was heard, allegedly heard, calling out the name of his girlfriend in the quad. So at Howard, the freshman dormitory, there are 4 particular dormitories named after historical Black women, in which freshman young ladies are have their residence, and they meet at a common point. And so he was allegedly seen and heard coming into the quad, hollering and screaming his girlfriend's name and calling for her to come outside. And this did not happen, but he proceeded to go through the quad, enter the dormitory, her dorm, and as she was coming out of her dorm room, he met her in the hallway and began to assault her, allegedly with a belt. And this is happening. A number of the young ladies are witnessing this, and they are going to door trying to get help from each other to, somebody to, call campus security, whatever the case is. And in the midst of this altercation, he brutally beats her. So it's more than just a belt, allegedly. But he also it goes unreprimanded. So this is
and we're going to talk about that as we talk about the culture, and then we talk about beyond Sean Combs and his history of violence. What is happening in our culture? Because yes, there's a spotlight on him and he's a celebrity and so on and so forth, but are there shades of this happening in all kinds of environments within our culture?
Yes, secrecy, complicity, and suppression.
Oh, okay.
So you have this kind of, it's not unique to Black culture. It's not unique to Sean Combs. It's not, unique to even the 21st century, So there are continuities so as I was watching the documentary, what was coming to my mind was, if we can pinpoint his predisposition or his alleged misconduct and predisposition to violence, particularly against women, but we also know that he's documented cases against men and women, as the documentary, lifted up. If we can go and trace this back decades, then we are dealing with suppression. We're also dealing with communities, this kind of complicity, suppression also becomes more of a norm within communities where there's already a distrust with authority, a distrust of the police, a distrust of whether or not they're actually going to help those who have been victimized, or if they're going to use this as an opportunity to enact more violence, on that community. So, so
good point.
I think that's like, critical, in terms of, we are the people who pause. It's the oppressed communities that pause before we call the police.
Yeah.
We see this in terms of the very wealthy to some degree, because they're going to call their lawyer or they cover up their assistant first, to help them figure something out, because they don't want to get wrapped up in the police. But, in terms of, there is a communal vulnerability element there, but there are continuities in terms of this secrecy, in terms of the suppression, in terms of the allowance. One of the things in the documentary was the evasion of prosecution. Even though he comes up in these investigations, he has these, very, highly witnessed incidences of rage and physical violence, etc., but somehow evades prosecution. He's not, and he learned very early on the purpose of NDAs, However, I do think that
So you mean evades prosecution like some other people that are pretty prominent today?
yeah, I
Who
mean,
also have a reality TV background?
without question, we talking about BS 47, yes, BS 47, Harvey Weinstein, Peter, what's the Peter Nygaard, who was the
Yes.
80 that 80 something, fashion guy who got caught up in some sex trafficking issues that had gone decades.
Epstein, while we're at it,
And
we're talking
Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. Yes.
I mean, to mention Trump, and at this point, when I close my eyes, if I'm thinking about Epstein, I'm thinking about Trump too. If I'm thinking about Trump, I'm
Yes.
thinking about Epstein.
Yes.
Because it's still a part of the same uh same I would say connection or thread or marriage of wealth and power, wealth, politics, and power, right?
Wealth, politics, and power. So let me ask you this, and for those of you watching, we would love your comments as well. So in watching this documentary, what were your initial reactions to it? And I know that there were multiple episodes and maybe different things hit you differently, but what did you initially feel or think?
I was heartbroken. I was not prepared for Audrey O'Day's.
Man, oh my God. Was it just me? Because I'm like, this sis does not want to go back and even, she doesn't want to remember. She does not want, she's like, I would rather not know what y'all really did to me.
Yes.
Carry on.
But that is a number of women.
But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be impacting her, because even if your subconscious, is suppressing it,
right?
It's like having a virus on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I'm not aware that there's a virus doesn't mean that virus is not wreaking havoc in the background and eventually might not lead to my computer crashing.
Well, one of the things I was thinking was also like how much this too is triggering for anybody watching. Like I feel like I needed another warning.
Yes,
I needed another warning.
Really
sign.
need. Yes.
Like hold up. Like we did say this might be disturbing to some viewers, but this particular, testimony. And I was also thinking, like, while they're interviewing her, do they have some mental health support? Like, do they have somebody?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes. To help her just in case because she said she read it out loud. This was her first time.
And I don't know why they had her read that out loud.
Well, let me also say this. It's important to 50 is a capitalist.
And I would say my personal opinion, I don't necessarily see him as a savior of women or
black. He's a documented batterer.
Okay, yeah. So let's just be clear about that. I'm not looking at 50 as like, oh my God, look at him, rushing to to say black women. No. Documented
batterer. But that her testimony stood out. I had read about Little Rod stuff, his terrible experiences, but there was a consistency. There has been these redundancies, right? And these particular testimonies among numerous survivors, right? That have reflecting these reflecting patterns and redundancies that we can't ignore. So, as my grandmother would say, everybody ain't lying, number one. And then number two, it was just very heartbreaking. And so I really felt for survivors who were watching it or listening to it themselves, and having that feeling. Some may have had that feeling. I don't want to know, like, the details. I wish I couldn't remember, in many ways that, the lack of memory or the lack of immediate recall is a means of grace to some degree, so persons can live day to day. So I even wonder how she felt post-interview, what that next morning, waking up post-interview, and these next days ahead, may have been for her.
And I saw another video, an interview of hers where they were saying, okay, so what do you think happens now that he's been convicted and so on? And she said, oh, he'll have a single out in another year, and it will race to the top of the charts. He's not going away. So there's also, that fear that people really have that, yes, he might be temporarily behind bars,
Mm-hmm.
but this nightmare, I don't know that I'll ever completely wake up from this nightmare, because even his publicist, his ex-publicist, was saying he's not the kind to ride off in the sunset. He's going to try and make a comeback. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that part of his sentencing included any kind of counseling. There's certainly, from what I have seen, does not appear to be any remorse from him or from his mother, because I am a mother of sons and I love my sons dearly. But I'm telling you, if one of my sons documented, first of all, I don't know how you're around him that much and you don't see, but let's say I didn't know, but now all of this has come out. Like you said, everybody ain't lying.
Right.
I don't know how, not publicly, but privately, I am going to have that conversation with my son. But publicly, as a woman, I'm going to make a statement regarding just the protection of women. But we've seen this before, right? Now, some of you do not come and crucify me, because we're having this conversation as Black women and we're talking about what's happening in our community. We are not absolving white men and what they do on a bigger scale even.
Right.
But I'm talking about my community at this time. But I remember feeling the same way when all of the information came out about our beloved Dr. Huxtable, Bill Cosby. And I had so much respect for his wife, Dr. Camille Cosby. And I was wondering, are you going to say anything in support of women? Yes, he's your husband. And I know that there are some people that may have exaggerated or made up some stuff, because I've gone back and seen some interviews with Janice Dickinson and I'm like, I'm not sure. But when do we also support women and the fact that women and men, young girls and boys, are too often victims of this kind of depravity, and they don't have protection? And however we treat the ones that have come to light informs those that have not, who are experiencing it, as to whether they should open up their mouths and report, or whether they should just be quiet. And if you find out that you're going to be twice victimized, maybe out of a job, maybe ridiculed, so on and so forth, the chances are you're going to be more likely to just grin and bear. And so that concerned me. So watching this on so many levels, first, I was just absolutely horrified, because I had not followed his career. I had not watched any of the other documentaries. I watched parts of the trial, and a lot of it was news to me.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, are you serious? I'm not a hip hop fan in that sense. I do like some of the music, but I didn't follow it in that way. And then the other part was, okay, but so many people knew what was going on. So many people on so many levels. So is it that people get enough dirt on others and then they keep quiet? Is it that we're all so greedy for fame and fortune, and we're willing to literally sell our souls just to, provide? Because I'm listening to Lil Rod, and from what I understand, he had a family. And he's trying to get paid to, get my family out of poverty and so on and so forth. And I'm like, at what point, as you are experiencing this, do you look around and you say, there's so much power, there's nothing I can do? Of course, there are bodyguards, there's guns, there's all kinds of stuff going on. But as a community, I was just like, how do we fight back? What are we teaching our sons? What are we teaching our daughters? And when you find out about these things, when you see these things, should you just be like, hey, see no evil, hear no evil, I'm just going to protect myself, I don't want to know? Or do we have an obligation and to speak up? And then the question is, who do you speak up to? And then does that then put your life in danger? Because when I was watching part of the episode, the part with Capricorn, was that her name?
Oh my God. Yes. Yes.
And I'm like, Capricorn Clapper, and I'm like, okay, so you knew these things about him, but you kept working. Oh, and
Yeah.
please, nobody hear this at all as blame the victim. That is not it at all. I'm looking at us as a culture, as a collective. How are we going to protect one another? Carry on. What were you going to say?
I think your perspective as a Black mother of sons is so important that you just shared, Aya, because there is something to say about mothering and the way that not only an individual or every individual mother takes on and has this responsibility of mothering, but that understanding communal mothering and the ways that we, Black mothers and communities take role into that extent, include grandmothers, but also the larger communal responsibility of nurture and care and the installation, imparting of value systems. And so the question is, what value systems are we imparting in our young people? If we see their constitution or we see young people as gardens, what seeds are we planting, in their hearts, in their minds? And one of the things that comes through, not only in this documentary but through other source material, is that Mother Janice was a part of a gangster cultural communal network where the value system is contrary and oppositional to the kind of emotional and relational and intelligence that we value, a part of what a loving community is supposed to be. So when you say, the question, I'll begin with the question, as a mother, like, when will you speak up for women? Like, when will you speak up, about, and what signs did you see early on of predispositions, et cetera, so forth. So I think it's important to, as we consider his nurturing and his shaping, there's a part of the documentary that I was, as I was talking to folk and just processing, we're really taken aback hearing about his violence toward his own mother. She confronts him after the stampede. And one of the things that Kirk notes is that, he then attacks her. He slaps her.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, right? He allegedly, attacks her and enacts, violence against his own mother. I also want to say, and this is in other clips. I mean, that his relationship in terms of with his mother and his shaping, I've just always found it very mystifying that he kisses his mother on the mouth. Okay, when they greet each other. I don't know if you notice this. There is a way that it appears that allegedly Mother Janice was raising a surrogate husband.
Well, and that tends to happen, doesn't it? Little man, you the man of the house now, all of those kind of conversations. Yes.
And I love this comment, in terms of the benefit, like it's difficult for those with close proximity to the perpetrator to extricate or speak up based on the benefits received. So I think it's important for us to distinguish between survivors and survivor accomplices, right? You have survivors, those who have where they have had violences, visited upon them, right? And then you have survivors who have experienced this violence visited upon them, but have also made a decision to incorporate, to act in their self-interest in a different way. Some survivors will decide in their self-interest to separate, to report, to isolate, to And some others like Capricorn Clark, like Kirk Burroughs, to survive the incidences that have been allegedly enacted upon them, and then make a decision out of their self-interest to continue relationship and proximity in order to benefit, whether that's financially and or the unseen currency of validation, which we saw with the juror fan number one. Okay, that was also very disturbing. Okay, so to your point, before we even go into the jury stuff, I think it's important to distinguish between the survivors and the survivor accomplices who go on to create and continue to support an environment conducive for other people to have violences enacted upon them by the same individual or culture. Because the distinguishing quality or the marker of this distinction between survivors and survivor accomplices is, oh, now we hear something now that you've gotten fired. Now that we hear something, now that you have to go to the point of suing Sean Combs in order to be compensated. So now you want to go into, oh, he's been violent since 1992. Well,
or you wait until Cassie files,
yes,
and then everybody else is coming out now, which could just be a factor of the fear and intimidation and just really feeling like they will not be heard. But since hers was accompanied by, and I can't imagine what would have happened if they did not have that video from the hotel.
Right.
Because he paid for that video to be erased, for it to go away. He thought he had the only copy of it.
Right.
But
powers and principalities are always.
I know. And so can you imagine how this case would have I don't even know that she would have been able to successfully file and have him.
We wouldn't have heard about it
without that video. That video, I think, was definitely a turning point for her. And even then, he didn't want to settle with her, because if he had settled, we may still not be having this conversation.
Well, I don't think he believed, and this is so presumptuous and speculative at best. I really don't think he believed that whatever evidence that she had, that it would it would actually come to light of day. I think if he knew that footage was still out there, then we wouldn't be talking about this right now.
And then of course he had so many incriminating tapes on her, which that's one of the things that they do. Even when people are being here in my community, we had a young girl who was being sex trafficked. And the way it started really was, hanging out with friends in places that she shouldn't have or whatever. And it appears that she may have been drugged and some sexual things happened and they recorded it. And then they got back with her later and was like, we've got this on you. If you don't come and do it, then we're going to report. And that became the thing that got her into that. And so I'm thinking even with Cassie and with all the other alleged victims, that if you know that there are videos of you, you're not even sure what you did on the video because you were under the influence of.
Yes.
There might be a part of you that's like, just for self-protection, I ain't going to say nothing, because if this is leaked, if this is released, then he's vindictive enough to do so, or appears to be. This would totally blow up my life. And so you keep quiet, even though you being quiet means it doesn't end with you.
That's right. I mean, this is what, goodness, what there is one of Sean Combs's former assistants who testifies to this. I'm thinking about to this alleged, taping, being drugged. Oh goodness, what is the brother's name? I think it's Brandon Paul, but I could be wrong.
Not the first one, not Burroughs, who got his stock taken away and all that. Not that one. Okay.
No. So this comes.
And by the way, his interview was heartbreaking too.
You know, so thinking about Kirk Burroughs, just to put a point, a pin in what that other thing I was about to say, you know, there, uh, yes and no for me. So
Because
yes.
I don't know anything about him except I saw his younger pictures back in their heyday.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw this visibly older man who
Mm-hmm.
looks like his life has been really hard for him.
Mm-hmm.
And when he ended with, because they were like, what kind of things? And he was like, sexually deviant things. And I was just like, oh my God.
But this is so what we don't hear about, but is that allegedly he was in a whole intimate, sexual relationship with Sean Combs. Like, and so within the context of his own consensual intimate relationship, he experienced non-consensual, sexual, misconduct.
Say that part louder, because I do believe whether it's live or later, there are some people who are going to watch this who are in certain situations, and you feel, well, because we're in a relationship, because we're married, then no, I couldn't possibly think that this other thing was an assault or rape or whatever. Can you say? I know I've got you putting pins in so many different things, but can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so it has to do with exploiting the vulnerability of relationship, the way that sexual violence is often concealed or mitigated or construed through the context or larger context of consensual relationship. So Kirk Burroughs was allegedly in a long-term, ongoing, intimate relationship with Sean Combs, and it allegedly was not monogamous, but ongoing. And within the context of that relationship, Kirk Burroughs is allegedly saying that he experienced Sean Combs' sexual deviation and sexual, assault against him within the context of that relationship. And so there was, and this is in additional to financial abuses, et cetera, so forth. And so it's part of dealing with malignant narcissists, whether that is your husband, whether that is your wife, whether that is your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your pastor, or your priest, whatever it is, there is an exploitation of the relationship that has been consensual to get persons to negate. And it's a part of the gaslighting as well, to negate the reality of their experience of violation that is very real. And so victim number 2 during the trial testifies to this kind of, ongoing, manipulation along with Cassie, in that we're in this consensual relationship, but you are doing non-consensual things, like things that I did not consent to my body, to my person, and recording and et cetera, so forth, that I did not say yes to. Or
that I was coerced to say yes
right
to.
yeah so and see that duress. So the other thing is, like, to consider consent responsibly, we have to consider the levels of duress,
of power. Yes.
So if a person is taking your cell phone, this is a part of it's one thing to be kidnapped, like Capricorn Clark, alleged that she was, and held at gunpoint, by Sean Combs. That's one level, right? It's an immediate threat. It's an immediate, situation of confinement, unlawful confinement, et cetera, so forth. But it's another thing when you try to get on the plane and they took your passport, so you can't leave the country, or have pressured you, as Kirk also says, that, he had all of these, it was threat after threat after threat. We don't fully know all of what those threats
or wherever you go or try to hide, this person or their goons show up,
Right.
or you're dating someone and their car blows up, or your parents have gotten a letter threatening them or extorting. Yeah, and at that point, it's like there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, I mean, and when you are under constantly being drugged. So this is a whole
That
nother
part,
aspect,
that
right?
part.
So now we know, now we know that the baby oil contains ketamine and what's the it's another opiate. It's
Let
an
me tell
opiate.
you, girl, I learned so much from this stuff. I was like, oh my God, like seriously?
So you don't even know what you consented to, you know. And if this is your partner and you trust and et cetera, so forth within this context, you really are deferring to other people's memory banks, and which is a place of gaslighting as well, right? But I do want to. This is a big point to me. What was missing? How do you? So I understand why it was missing, but it also did a huge disservice, in terms of. So we don't want to talk about that 50 Cent and Sean Combs were dealing with the same woman, that the mother of 50 Cent's youngest son was also the girlfriend and long-term girlfriend and alleged
Wait a second.
liaison.
Was she a long-term girlfriend or was she a freak-off partner?
Well, they're allegedly she was his girlfriend literally up until the point of his arrest.
Yes,
from like
and
the
that,
little
and that
rod.
supposedly she was in that relationship partially because she's not getting that much financial support from
Right.
50 Cent.
Right. I mean, so I mean, but that's even questionable.
Although she wasn't really getting that much either from Sean Combs. So
I mean, right. I mean, well, I don't, I don't want to be. Forgive me for laughing because this is a serious topic. But if you're quote unquote, if you have arranged specific time periods with a line item associated with it, like you have me for 7 days to do whatever you want for 15 grand or 10 grand or whatever the case is. And you've organized it so I'm such a I'm no longer just the liaison or the on-call sexual worker or partner, but we're now in a relationship and you're paying and have committed to pay my rent, my rent every month, right? There's a whole, I think the missing element in terms of Daphne Joy, is particularly important, not just to expose the bias or conflict of interests, behind executive production, but also when we think about Epstein level activities. And this is someone who she and her, she's described allegedly as the Ghislaine Maxwell of hip hop. I'm thinking of Lord, what's his name? Sue Lynn. She's Daphne Joy's best friend, allegedly, and a part of organizing sexual liaisons, not only for Diddy, but for other rap, artists. And so there's and it's not a coincidence that we see both of these young ladies somehow tied up, and they could be, survivor liaison accomplices themselves, right? Tied up in the Peter Nagard situation. So there's some threads here that make you scratch your head and think this is bigger than just Diddy.
So
right?
we're still being fed a narrative, because yes, there are names that have popped up other times, but that certainly, at least to my remembrance in this documentary, didn't show up. Allegedly, people, what happened between him and Clyde Davis or other people that may have set up hey, this is what we do in this field. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about just within the industry, and when we think about larger cultural institutions.
That's what I want to talk about. The larger cultural institutions, what we as everyday people do, what responsibility we bear, and what are we going to do differently for watching this? Because when I was done and I needed to go like take a shower and burn some sage and pray and do all the things, and that's in that way, it was like, okay, so what do I do with this information? Because I don't want to be entertained by trauma.
Right.
How does this impact how I show up? And again, as a mother and as someone who mentors young people, what conversations should I be having? Because are there people that I know who are in these situations, but feeling like they have nowhere to go? And even from a legal standpoint, and for those of you, I mean, I was looking at it, from the social work, counseling perspective, our therapists, psychotherapists, all of that, the legal community, looking at law enforcement, the ways that even with that incident at the hotel, wasn't law enforcement, well, the security officers to some degree, they are law enforcement, but then it's just like, oh, we're just going to look the other way. We don't get paid that much. He's going to pay us. And then when you finish that part, we're going to get back to these jurors. Because that part on the jurors was like, I was ready to fall out. That was crazy. Okay, carry on in whatever direction.
No, I think in many ways, Aya, you are already doing the work, and that opposes the normalization. Because I think we can take two things, not just two, but we can come out of the documentary and there's some people who like, that's just the world, or I knew something was going on, or he's just like, everybody else who's doing X, Y, and Z, and feel no more empowered to do anything different moving forward. But it fuels a hopelessness, to some degree. Yes. Right. And I think where you have, or number two, some folks like you and I, when we're coming out of deeply impacted, and I certainly had to get my butt up and go to church this morning, first Sunday, and be in fellowship with the saints, in the sense, we do our saltwater bath and all of that cleansing. I had to pull the salt out, like, because it's heavy, right? Especially, if it's just heavy, right? And so you can take that heaviness and move from judgment to places of empathy. And I think it's important that in each conversation that we have, debriefing, because the good thing is that this is on a level of exposure where just about 1 out of every 3 people have seen it or heard about it. If you're walking down the street, depending on your community, etc. It provides an opportunity and impetus to begin to talk about how we need to disrupt, how courage is contagious. Capricorn Clark, Kirk, you have these people coming out now, now talking about what had been going on and their complicity and all of this, etc. But how does that motivate you then now to know that we can speak, even if it comes out of self-interest or the lack of benefits people have experienced. When we get the connection with the juror is this. It can be easily dismissed. The body language, and I'm sure we're talking about juror
number 160, my sister.
And I ain't gonna say, she out here. So the connection with, the kind of what do we do now? So while that, her body language, testimony of jury deliberation, her perspective can be easily dismissed as a fangirl moment. And the way fangirl with celebrity cases create great biases, and she should have been eliminated during jury selection, right? However, you know, there's something deeper there. And I posted about this, and that was when I saw her face, when I heard her blatant dismissal and dismissiveness of Capricorn Clark's
Well,
testimony.
she was emotional, so yeah.
And was at the same time, and I'm not sure if it was anxiety or nervousness or actual pleasure that that can be attributed to her affect during that interview, which was very disturbing as well. And note, she's smiling, she's laughing, she's kikiing. There is a skit like
It
granny
was
might
like
say,
two
skinning
girlfriends
and
were just
grinning,
chatting about brunch or something.
skinning
Yeah.
and grinning, or boy, like, you know. So the other thing was this note around, first and foremost, she situated herself first and as a fan. I grew up in hip hop, and I've always loved P Diddy, or whatever the case
No.
is.
She said she wasn't a fan of his, but she was a fan of the group 126 or 226 group with the 26 day 26. I think
Day 26, and that she watched Making the Band all
yeah,
the time.
and she watched and then she was like, and so yeah, when he was nodding, I think that's his go-to signature, because that he did that on Making the Band. And I was like, girl, you were studying this man and you remember what he did on Making the Band from how many decades ago?
So she also said at points he looked over and I looked at him and he looked at me. I got to go back to the transcript, because there was this, it was more than just, so one, disturbing the whole fangirl stuff, and also this feeling of that she knew him already prior to. Problematic. I mean, you know this as an attorney, problematic in terms of corruption of justice. Where's the blind-eyed lady, right? At the same time, what I felt was this sense of joy, not joy, but happiness and validation in feeling like she was important.
Yes.
And recognized by him and had a connection to him, which is often associated with obsessive fangirl behavior. But also it reminded me of the many women in the church, okay, who, when you have incidences of alleged sexual misconduct, abuse of power and privilege, the exploitation of vulnerability, young women, et cetera, so forth, situations, and you have sisters, not just brothers who want to defend, the pastor, whatever the case, and they try to take a black man down, that kind of rhetoric and commentary. But you also have the women who decide to be gatekeepers and protectors because they experience some kind of validation through proximity, or association. We experienced this with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump. Okay. I mean, it was like, I don't want to go too far with that, but it was clear that Marjorie Taylor Greene was a Trump fan girl. He could do no wrong, and felt and presented and advocated on his behalf, within the context of being flattered by him and feeling like she can do something for him that he enjoys and that he likes, and receiving that validation of proximity. So I do think we need to talk to each other about where we get our validation from, and whether that is wealth, materialism, or if it is the current emotional currency that
where do we get our validation from?
Where are we getting our validation? And I think it's important to have conversations with our young, with not just young people in general, but particularly be given masculine power, with our young men and young women who are pursuing careers, that put them in places and contexts where you have a preponderance, a pervasiveness of this, dominative power dynamic with that systemic and larger institutional enabling spaces,
I think
like
when
this
you talk
program.
about I think when you talk about enabling, also in communities where there has been a lot of oppression already, it's also the sense of you're gonna be the one to take this Black person down. You
Yeah,
know,
the
you
Capricorn
know,
Clark
yeah,
comment.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, hey, we're doing this. He's doing this for the culture, or our one billionaire. You're a hater because other people are going to turn around and say you are the problem, as opposed to
Mhm.
the person who was the problem. Because how dare you expose them and bring down our, esteemed professor or physician or attorney or nurse or pastor. Let's talk
Yes,
about
it's
that
a
in the church.
deep
And
intracultural
yes,
dynamic,
yeah.
that is unique to vulnerable communities, particularly marginalized communities. We're talking about our community, Black communities that have, this history of, we can't think about our history in this country without seeing a Black man on a lynching tree. We can't think about our history in this country without thinking about the many of us who are fair skinned, not because of consensual relationships, but because of the rape and assault of Black women. And so the white blood that's going through our veins, or the genetic expression that comes by no fault of our own. So we have the legacy of trauma and wanting to avoid contributing in any way, to that trauma. And unfortunately, and Bell Hooks talks about this, in terms of, Black women and other women in marginal communities feeling like they have to do the job of protecting
Mm-hmm.
are not women, not other women, but protecting the men, because
Yes.
they are our exterior representatives. They are
Yeah.
our representatives to the outside world. And so, I do think we do need to ask ourselves, when Capricorn Clark, I don't disbelieve her when she says, that she thought that she was protecting the culture, that she wanted to protect, by not
Well,
taking him
the
down.
same way we're protecting the church, the same way we're protecting the reputation of our family. But you know that your daddy has abused you, your sister, and your
Mm-hmm.
niece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that we are worthy of
Oh,
protection too.
and by the way, we know women can be abusers as well. So y'all don't take this as a gender thing. Yeah.
I mean, Diddy is, Sean Combs is a perfect example of this, in terms of his first experiences of violence are mediated through his mother, right?
True.
And so
Allegedly.
allegedly,
Yes.
mediated through his mother. And um and and so I do think it's important that we communicate to our children, regardless of gender, but particularly our Black children, that everybody is worthy of being defended, and that there are ways of going about justice, and this is where I think we should do some communal educating, and restorative justice really is a thing. It's not just something, because the justice system is so corrupt.
Speak more on that. What do you mean when you say restorative justice?
I'm talking about when communities come together and decide to engage in a process of addressing issues of violation, communal infractions, which in this case, if we're talking about experiences of sexual violence, it's about the way that a community decides to hold members of its own community accountable, um, uh, in ways that honor um, the survivors, or those who did not even may have even survived, the violation, but also in a way that speaks to um, the person who has done the alleged misconduct or the alleged infraction. And so, sometimes what that looks like, number one, is, the physical protection of those who have been violated, and making sure Uncle so and so or Auntie so and so does not have access to children in this family or in the community.
Yes.
and that the community is aware that this person is sick, you know, or has a propensity to whatever, right? So it's about the community. When I talk about restorative justice, I'm talking about the community working within its own power, which we have a lot of power just in our community. You know, like my question is, when he was, you know, just even I think about the whole situation at Howard, and as an alum, I'm really kind of upset about this. And that's the sense of, I can't imagine one of my sisters in the dorm being violated that way, and not 19 or 11 of us in the hallway jump on him.
That's what I was saying. I was like, "What? We're just looking and waiting for who to come save us. Like, we outnumber you. Come on."
You know, so this is, you know, I think about the Deacons for Defense down in Mississippi. You know what I mean? And you know, just there is power that we have in community to, and we can commit as a community to ignore, which is to be complicit in the continuance and perpetuation of enacting violence.
So what happens is, in this culture, and it's not just this culture, because I grew up in Nigeria and I see it there too, but this individualism. It's like, hey, I don't know what they got going on, so you know, I'm not going to get involved. Or this culture of what they call it, something is for snitches. What's that terminology that they use? But basically, stitches are for snitches.
Snitches get stitches, rats get bats.
Okay, there you go. You know, and so the fact that we don't, as much as we should, know our power, activate our power to protect one another.
Right.
The other thing I see is this tendency not to believe victims.
Well, we don't want to believe, you know, especially when they're women, because the first thing that we get in the text, I mean, we have to talk about, you know, at some point have a part 2 to talk about, you know, the you know, religious kind of dynamics. Because steeped in most persons is Eve is the culprit. Eve was
okay, Pastor. Okay, because let's go there.
Eve is the reason that
for all of our issues, she ushered evil into the world. It's the woman. It's the daggone woman. Yes.
You have, you know,
and so many of the Abrahamic religions have this thing about women being less than women. Certainly, if you're on your period, you're filthy, you're dirty, you're unclean, all of that. And how all of this is packaged.
Because it's all about the patriarchs. So one thing about the Abrahamic traditions, you just said it, in the name of the nomenclature, it's about the patriarchs.
Yes.
And so, and women are only mentioned in these sacred texts, Torah, Torah, New Testament, Quran, for the purpose that they serve in telling and ushering
their objects
in question.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So Eve is a part, is, you know, it I think in terms of this dilemma of whether to believe, who are we to believe? You know, there is ingrained within culture, you know, these particular cultures within Abrahamic faith traditions, to disbelieve women because women are automatically guilty. Not have a propensity to guilt, but they automatically guilty. And so even if she is believed, the next question is, well, what did she do? What did she do to deserve it? What did she do to put herself in a position to be treated that way? What was she wearing? You know, that you have persons who are entering the entertainment industry, not because of a harlot spirit or, you know, some kind of, you know, desire to be sexually promiscuous or vixenette, but because they actually have talent, right? And so this question that was raised in the chat around, you know, how do we prepare our young people who are trying to enter the entertainment industry? And I think a part of it is we help them do their homework on those who don't have the trail behind them. We don't hear nothing about Missy Elliott being a sexual deviant and a trail of civil lawsuits against her for what I'm. So I name her as an example that there are people in the industry that not are all bad, and that not are associated with the abuse of power. And
I think it's also imperative that when you're talking about doing our homework, I think it's also imperative not to let people earn your trust before you just give it to them.
yes,
So I would say this again, just using my experience. When my children were younger, I've had occasions where parents have dropped their children off in my driveway. Never rang the doorbell. By the time the child walked up and rang the doorbell and I got to the door, the car was down on the street. You never met me. Maybe you think you've heard something, or she's an attorney. That doesn't mean anything. Yes. You just dropped off your child. Sometimes for a sleepover.
Yeah.
And you did not bother to do any due diligence. Listen, if you want my child to sleep over at your house, I'm coming. First of all, I would have had to have known you on a whole different level. But then I'm coming into your house. I am looking, because you want my child at your house. I'm looking and I'm asking questions. I want to know who else lives here. And so actually my children will tell you, I would, unless it was a close family friend, I've gotten to know them. No, ma'am. Just because you like her at school or I met them at a basketball game or whatever does not equate I'm going to drop my child off to spend the night at your place. And so I would say that if you are, and I know that everybody doesn't come from this kind of support. If you have a child who wants to go into the entertainment industry, you need to figure out how you're going to configure your work schedule. Show up with your child.
You know who is also who gives
in the room testimony all the time. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know who gives no, I apologize. I just immediately thought about Keke Palmer and the way that she discussed the protectiveness of her mother, like her mother's protectiveness over her. And which included, really giving her all. Like if Keke had an appointment, her mother had an appointment. If Keke had to travel, her mother was with her traveling. And that she also helped her instill boundaries around her time and energy and where she could go and who was with her. And if her mother wasn't with her, she wasn't going, kind of thing. So I do think that we need to, to take a vested interest into teaching how to trust. But it means that the parent already knows how to trust themselves.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that, because in conversation with my sister earlier, we were talking about how much we are taught, particularly as girls, because we're both female, we're speaking from our experience, how much we are taught to disregard our instincts and to quiet our own intuition. So, you get a feeling, but it's like, hey, no, I'm probably overthinking this. This might be my one shot. And this goes for males as well. And I would say if you don't have a parent who can support you in that way, find a buddy up with somebody. Hey, no, we are a packet. We stay and hopefully it's not someone who will easily be persuaded. I was also listening to an interview that Trevor Noah was doing, and they were asking him about leaving the Daily Show and why did he leave pretty much at his peak or whatever. And he said that a close friend of him had told him, you need to, and I'm going to be paraphrasing, something along the lines of, you need to practice doing without.
Yes.
And what that friend was saying is, if you already have gotten to the point where I can survive on $2 a day, some kind of way, it's not the optimum situation, but I can survive on that, then you're less likely to allow money and the opportunity
to exploit you.
Yeah, you're like, oh, well, because if I don't have this, how would I live? And he was like, and so the time to build that muscle up, so to speak, is even when things are going great, just go ahead and live way beneath your means, whatever, and experience what it is not to have all the trappings, so that you're not so taken by the trappings. And we saw that with Dave Chappelle.
Yes.
Where he was able to say, nope, my mental health, and y'all are not about to turn me into a crazy person, and walked away from $50 million. Like, how many people can do something?
I mean, that's such a critical point, Aya, because when you think about the courage to say no, or and the trust, being able to practice doing without comes with a certain degree of privilege, right? So some people can't afford to walk away
because it's a practice. You really know,
because you already know. But to those persons who this is all that I have, or I don't have a dime to my name, and so I have to make this concession. That for the everyday average person that's upset that groceries haven't gone down, the eggs are still $5, $7. Those are those everyday concessions, and this is why Puffy didn't want to pay people. Remember the comment around, financial independence, but this is not uncommon in terms of malignant narcissistic control, dynamics in holding purse strings. But I do think it comes back to community, right? Persons who feel like this is all I have, I can't, or who are more susceptible to being exploited, coerced, under financial duress, are those who feel most isolated from their communities of origin, right? I can't call, so-and-so, I can't sleep on their couch. If I call, I can't call this. So there's something within me, even when I had my accounts were in negative. Okay, we talking about being a student at Howard, having to walk to CVS and put them couple of dollars together, go grocery shopping real quick, with your little money that you had, if you did. When you are without, I think it's important to know the richness and the wealth that is in our communities. I knew I wasn't gonna go hungry. Like, there was something in me that knew I wasn't gonna be homeless. Even if I got evicted and my doggone financial aid didn't come through, I'm gonna find somebody that somebody know. Okay, so I do think it's important to ingrain and to continue to remind those of us, particularly the most vulnerable in our communities, who are the youngest, the least supported, in terms of their immediate, family networks, etc., to give them the assurances of community, like what that you can draw on a larger community. I will remember my late sister, who she had just moved to a town in Tennessee, didn't know anybody. It was a whole backwood kind of city, town, and it was a conversation that I had with her about, and it was a lot of I don't haves, and I said, we United Methodists. This is just one small example. I was like, we United Methodists. I said, is there a United Methodist church close to you? And she was like, Miss Ibu, I think there's like one, down the block or whatever, in proximity. And I was just like, reach out to them and let them know you knew in town, whatever, and your point of need. And, up until throughout from that 2 weeks from that phone call on to the time that she eventually moved, but the time that she was there, that was her church home. And they helped provide her rent. They helped her with subsidy. It's important to be able to help folks who think that all they have is one or two things, or that they are without, that we are part of a larger network. And part of that is being comfortable and vulnerable in conversation, to say and creating a space where persons don't have to live in shame about what they're going through or what they have going on.
So, because we could have this conversation for a really long time. I would say that for those of us listening, it's really, we are the community. it's really important for, at least for me, to evaluate in what ways am I continuing to build community.
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
want to build community when you quote unquote don't need community, you
Mm-hmm.
know, before you need community. How are we, those of us who are a little bit more mature, a little bit more seasoned in age, how are we reaching out to our young people? How are we reaching out to each other? Even those of your friends who seem strong, who seem like they're living it up, because I'm sure that there were people who were very envious of Cassie and just thought, oh my God, what an amazing life. And we see you on the red carpet and so on and so forth. But this is a young woman who went in wanting to be, you know, have a music career. And besides that one song, I don't know if there was ever any other song that was released. You know, so how are we paying attention to people? Are we supporting organizations that provide mental health services? Are we looking into our communities to make sure that we have homeless shelters that are not cesspools for other kind of deviancy? That when we're voting, that we are voting in people who are making decisions that will provide a social structure for those who are most vulnerable? Because when you don't have that safety net, that is when you are more likely to fall into the you know, claws of these predators. And then I would say, even when it feels like it might cause you personal harm, we have a responsibility to out these predators.
Absolutely. 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 It just we have a responsibility. And I think what is assumed but not said at this point is that we are also thinking about responsibility and community care out of a larger ethic of of love, right? That, you know, love for ourselves, love for others, love for our children. At the same time, there are value systems that make us more vulnerable. So not even just, you know, financial precarity or, you know, lack of support systems at home, et cetera, so forth, or even coming from, you know, violent homes, violent backgrounds, et cetera, but vanity and greed. That we are living in a larger cultural reality that are shaping with every Instagram swipe, with every TikTok swipe, with much of what we are listening to and as normalized on the radio, vanity and greed.
And what we are willing to do for that.
And
Yes.
some folks are willing to sacrifice their bodies. Some folks are willing to sacrifice their sanity. Some folks are willing to sacrifice other women's bodies and other men's bodies, you know, and sanity on that altar, right? So, as a spiritual person, I'm going to something that Brother Cat Williams said. You know,
let me tell you, what did Cat Williams say at the beginning of 2025?
He said a whole lot. He said, number one, you got to tell Diddy no.
Is the guy prophetic or what?
I mean, without question, he said the big D deviants, okay, will be exposed, okay, and that is what has been happening, okay.
And he and Monique tried to tell Shannon. Shannon wasn't listening.
But as of late, Cat Williams, he was being interviewed on a podcast by former First Lady Michelle Obama and her brother.
Yes.
And one of the things he said was, if you believe in a higher power, and so this goes to the ethics, right? If you believe in a higher power, call on that higher power to assist and depend on nurturing your relationship and dependency on your higher power to help you make decisions, to help protect you, to help provide for you, etc., and not depending on anything outside of that higher power, including ourselves, you know, our own ingenuity, to do that provision. And he said, you know, and I want to quote him directly. He said, you know, if you're he said, everybody does not serve God. Some people serve the devil. And if you are in relationship with people whose relationship with the devil is stronger than your relationship with God, then that's your fault. And I think that that's important. Just as we moving forward, we need to help each other and deal with self first, in collecting and building a relationship and strengthening our relationship with our higher power that helps hold us morally accountable. Oh my gosh. Who said Lord, Lord, I will also say that Cat, I love him. With some of his comments are so homophobic. He just, some of that stuff is just with homophobia. Which is probably
I think Kat is like, do what you want to do, but not with mine.
But not with mine. Like, sometimes you got. He said
Yes,
you got to
he
tell
has
Diddy no.
boundaries.
He said you got to tell Diddy no because he ain't. I don't mean to laugh, Lord, forgive me.
But you know what? And the time to tell no might be not getting into the room in the first place. It might be not taking that first drink.
It's not for
might
me.
be not thinking, not having that hubris where you think, oh yeah, this happened to other people, but not to me. So I even think of people with the felon in chief, the BS 47, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses that are still saying, oh, now we did business with him and he didn't pay me, or the attorneys he's not paying. I'm like, what made you think you were going to be different? And apparently, that's something that Sean Combs and Trump, another thing they have in common is we're just not going to pay folk.
We ain't paying people because you don't have to. Once you learn greed says I don't have to pay you because I can get away, especially if you have been given license. You're unprosecutable, you've evaded prosecution, or you got 9 attorneys to make sure you stay out of jail forever, for your whole life. Yeah. This gives you the myth of untouchable, that grandiosity that is specific to people who have narcissistic personality disorder, of which I am not a psychiatrist, but I'm sure both of those men that you just mentioned have those similarities. Yeah.
So I'm going to say my last few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to say whatever else you'd like to say. I'm thinking about what I want to focus on at this time. I would say women are not objects.
Amen.
We are not things to be owned, things to be controlled, things to be abused. I'm saying that to men, women, and every other gender in between. Neither are men. This whole idea of she's mine, he's like, we cannot own people. We need to really challenge a lot of what we're taking in, some of the music that is played, even how I hear women now referring to themselves as the B word and so on and so forth. I'm like, oh my goodness, do you all understand that there are levels to this, that there's something happening to you psychologically? If you can call yourself that, then where do you stand when someone else is calling you that and then is treating you in that same way? I would say, again, build community, find 1 or 2 trusted people. And I know that can seem hard, but one of the ways to do that is to be someone that can be trusted yourself, and plan.
That's right. That's right.
Be for others what you would, ultimately want people to be for you. Will you be betrayed by some? Yes. But there are going to be some other good ones out there, because there are. And please, y'all, I understand that our laws say innocent until proven guilty. I absolutely get that. But I also believe we need to believe people when they say they're victimized. Now, that doesn't mean that you immediately throw the person that they're accusing under the bus, but pull that person who is trying to tell you something is going on, pull them close and hear them out. Yeah. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt, not the person they're accusing. Because if we just did that within our homes, within our smaller groups, we will begin to send a message to young people who are watching and to the people who are already on this path of doing violence on other people, that this is not accepted in our community. When I'm talking with my sons, I'm definitely speaking these things to them. And when I'm talking to my daughters, I'm speaking these things to them. And I'm also telling them, whatever situation you find yourself in, however much shame you think, oh, what I already have done might bring to my family, come home.
Yes.
Come home. Don't stay in it and let it blow up. You know, that don't stay in it and be a perpetual victim. Come home where you are going to be loved and supported, because we all make mistakes. So don't let one mistake or 2 or 10, I was under the influence, whatever, don't let that be the thing that allows you to sentence yourself to some long-term harm. So, you know, kudos to Cassie, whatever it eventually took, because she tried to get away from Diddy multiple times, at least allegedly. That's what I've heard. Kudos to her for finally finding a way out. And braving the scorn, because there were so many people who were excoriating her, including, oh girl, I'm about to close and we didn't get to that other juror, the man. Okay, I'm going to be quiet. You did. Yeah, Mace got out. Mace hasn't told his whole story of what happened and why he got out. But he's the second one who got out and went to the church.
Well, Mason have to, well, he might be the third, like, because, you know, that's one of his former producers, Bad Boy, left. But this is the other thing. He was able to get out because he could financially. And he also was reluctant and never signed any kind of NDA that was put in front of him from Bad Boy Entertainment.
So he had a little bit of knowledge of what not to do. Yeah.
I mean, I echo everything that you just said. I think the only thing I would say, just in closing, is to know that we are sowing seeds with every desire and with the choices that we make to enact or support those desires and to come to fruition. So if we are desiring out of vanity, out of greed, and our choices are in alignment with that, then it gets a bit harder to protect ourselves and to have some kind of ethical system that can support our communal flourishing, if we're acting out of those individualistic and destructive passions. And for those who are acting out of, you know, making decisions out of love, truth, justice, mercy, things that are noble, we come from a strong community that supports these cardinal and higher virtues, that has this possibility within it, because we're acting out of love, to condemn shame, to become safe spaces for people to tell their truth, to be able to confront on a before we start talking about Diddy, you know, and all the stuff that's happening outside. If we are operating out of love, out of community, and hope, then we can confront the nefarious and deviancies in our own families. That is the groundwork for how we will confront things in the world.
Yes. Yeah. So quick question. So he gets out of jail. If he gets out of jail, it looks like he's buying favors in jail from what I've heard, allegedly. But he gets out of jail. Does the Black community embrace him again?
There will be some. Oh, yes. I mean, I don't think, because we are so diverse, because we have, because of the role of Black culture and his role in shaping it, to some degree, for a certain number of
man, that hurts my heart to hear his role in shaping it.
But he has. I mean, this is the thing, you know, this goes to, I will never forget, counseling.
But it's amazing how I know I'm trying to for us to wrap up. It's amazing how a man who admittedly has limited talent has been in the center of people way more talented than him suddenly being unalived, as they would say. And then almost like, how you watch, I'm not a big video gamer, but when I was younger, we had Pac-Man, right? And you that little thing, and then you get stronger, and and my children watch some things where they're adults and young adults now, but it's like if you conquer someone, you assume their powers. It's almost like this dude out here allegedly getting rid of people and somehow absorbing the love or the trajectory that other person was on. Let's look at Biggie, for instance. And then every step I take becomes this huge hit.
Right? So part 2, we're going to talk about blood magic.
Girl.
We're going to talk about, but this is what happens when people die in our families. And you got that one person who was not around, who was around and was particularly destructive, even, doing stuff that you don't brag about, but at the funeral, they crying, they ready to throw themselves in the grave with them. And they switch and use all, try to become that person.
Yes.
So we do have these things on a very micro level, but to a larger degree, a part of vanity greed will prompt you to make other agreements
with the devil,
with the devil, or just with death. And so once he was not able to and refused to accept responsibility with that stampede, and the death, I mean, that case, when the families of the victims, those who perished, started, suing, that went on for years and years and years before there was any resolve, so the fact that would even go that far, that you would get before media and say, we have to do everything in our power to make sure this doesn't happen again. He didn't say we. He said, however this happened, it needs to be addressed so that it never happens. There was a complete evasion of responsibility.
No accountability.
But the start of a trajectory of standing in agreement with death, that some lives are not worth are not worth people. Some people are worthy of death. I'm worthy of life. And it is a whole nother level of agreement with death in utilizing person's demise in order to help lift you up, to put more money in your pocket, but more particularly to get that emotional currency, that spiritual currency of validation.
Yes.
So every time somebody died, he still got paid. It still uplifted or eliminated his competition. I'm talking about, not I'm talking about Black Rob. We could talk about Tupac and Biggie. We could talk about Craig Mack. We also, need to just, so there seems to be an alleged association and repeated pattern of him standing in agreement with death as a bargaining chip for his success. And, we have to know that there's always somebody, if we're operating out of vanity, greed, okay, out of non-productive, cardinal virtue, right? That, and inordinate self-love, perversions of pride.
Perversions, because he turns around and calls himself love. My goodness.
Well, he calls himself love, but he also says God is the Son of God is the only person I can compare myself to while he's looking in the camera. You know, he go and which has been shaped. That's a whole nother conversation.
Just like Trump says, no, I don't think I've ever done anything that I'll have to ask forgiveness for. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, he says that. He said that years ago, right? Year before last, for the campaign, whatever. But now he's talking about how he want to go to heaven, and he thinks he's not doing a good job. So, you know, sometimes these conversations come after we done had a stroke or had a moment where it's hard to breathe.
Principalities and powers in high places.
Amen. Amen. That's it. Wow. Yeah, it's a lot.
There's a lot, and there's so much more, because we could also talk about the misogyny of that other juror that was interviewed, the male, where he was like, well, yeah, you know, but since she came back, you know, I don't think there was any coercion. It takes two. Do you remember?
He wrapped it up. It takes two to clap.
It takes two to clap. So she must have been clapping with him. Well, must not have.
He completely, you know, to Puffy's renaming himself as Love. We know it's corrupted sense of love that he must have to do that. But then
it's not love. It's not love. But yes.
The male juror gives us evidence of this, in the sense of he wrapped it all up as two people. They were two people in love.
Yeah. He said, yeah, it was just a lot of love. I was like,
and that's the corruption of.
And
there's a lot of people who believe.
Sir, if that's what you believe, I'm scared for whoever is in an intimate relationship with you.
I said to myself, I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. What's going on in your house? Well, that is okay. But a lot of people believe that love is somehow separate from respect. That we talk about two completely different things, or that they are that somehow love is mutually exclusive. Like it can, or I'm using the wrong language, that it can exist without respect. Like that is the corruption of our cultural imagination that I think is probably that for me is the way to move forward, and not conditioning and interrupting and reteaching children, men, women, ourselves, that love cannot exist without respect. It is.
I'm telling you, from what during my days when I investigated and prosecuted domestic violence cases, it was eye-opening to me. The number of times we were like, he hit me because he loved me. It was because he cares for me so much, and so he couldn't control himself. If he didn't care about me, he wouldn't hit me. Like, okay.
But that's the corrupted sense of the corrupted sense of love.
That is the corrupted sense, yeah.
And that's what the devil does. The devil operates by misconstruing and changing our definitions of what is sacred.
So if you were triggered by the documentary, or unfortunately by any of our conversation today, please do reach out for help.
Yes.
And it's okay to reach out for help to multiple channels, if you will. If you reached out to your pastor and they are on that patriarchy, misogynistic, track, try someone else and try someone else. Like, you are deserving. We are all deserving of respect. We're all deserving to feel safe. We're all deserving of our dignity. And so if you're in a position right now, you're listening to this live or later, and you're going, I'm living through some of this stuff, please reach out for help. Because here's the deal. Your abuser is never going to stop until you stop them. There's no manner of acquiescing, making them feel better, cooking them eggs in the middle of the night, whatever it was, using however much baby oil, sleeping with however many people they tell you to sleep with to make them feel that you are not going to be able to appease them.
Right.
You've got to stop it. They will not stop on their own.
Yeah. And it's not our job to heal our abusers.
Oh, say that again.
It is not our job to heal our abusers. And many codependents feel that way. That sense of that if I stay, I know that there's a good side to this person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he has a kindness in him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or he's not all bad, or he does these things, or she does these things, you know, or she's really loving mother, but she be beating you up. You know what I mean? So there's a whole nother, you know, there's this kind of empathizing and over empathizing and a perversion of empathy, you know, to the point of self-negation, where people
Yeah,
feel like,
I'm only like this with you, you know, and without you, who would I need you in my life, you know it, and because you want to feel needed, you want
come
to feel
on,
important,
yeah,
you want
yeah.
to feel validated. This person is punching your lights out, and you're turning around and saying, "But I'm the only one who can save him or her. I'm the only one who understands them." No, ma'am, no, sir. Get out. Get out. Get out, but also know that the most dangerous time
Is when
for
you
someone
decide to
who's
leave.
being abused is when they try to get out. So please, 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 please talk to a counselor. Take all the precautions. Listen and plan. You know, because you do want to take care of yourself. And yes, the most dangerous time for someone who's abused is the time when they try to leave. So yes, please.
Mhm.
All right. I shouldn't say Miss, Dr. Michelle Watkins, all of that, theologian, womanist. I didn't know hip hop aficionado. I mean, all the things. Thank you so much for taking time out on your Sunday evening for us to have what I know is just the beginning of the conversations that we need to have on an ongoing
Yes.
basis in our community. But thank you so much for the work that you do. Where can people find you?
You can find me at drmichelleewatkins.com, or you can go to stjohns.edu and put my name in. That is my day job. I look forward to being in further conversation with you on this topic and many others, because there's so much more to unpack. But thank you so much for having me and for the impromptu.
I know. This was not planned, y'all. It was pretty much like that.
Right,
Okay,
because I
let's do
still
it.
got to ask you. There's so many questions I still want to ask. I want to know about, you know, how did you feel about the jury not being sequestered? You know,
You know
about them
what?
going
Yeah,
home every
yeah.
week.
So see, you guys see, we are trying to end. I don't know what the prosecution was thinking. They absolutely should have been sequestered. We can see from that documentary that, you know, like the BS 47, the felon in chief, they understand the power of media and how to manipulate it. And so the fact that Diddy was like, hey, listen, we got to find someone who can be dirty, who can, you know, and go out and spread these narratives. And there's this lady, she's on YouTube, Tish Tells, I think. And Tish Tells, I would sometimes catch her updates at the end of the day because I was working and couldn't sit and watch the whole thing, the whole trial all day. And she was talking about how Sean Combs' PR team were holding court with a whole bunch of bloggers and influencers and pretty much saying, hey, we're going to give you the transcript. We're going to highlight which parts you need to talk about. We're going to give you the counterpoints, all of that. And so the airwaves were saturated. And so I don't know why the prosecution did not sequester. I do not know.
Or even ask for I don't even know if they had petitioned for either for a change of venue, you know, to begin with. Like that's number one because of his celebrity status and
I think you know, the prosecutors are also human. These are all people who, you know, may not listen. We don't know who Sean Combs was tied into.
That's right. That's
and who
right.
is above them.
That's
making calls and, you know, balls and strikes and so on and so forth. Because even during the trial, remember, Trump had made a couple of comments about the trial, which as the president, is like, what are you doing? And so
there's
we don't know what pressure they were under, right, or why they made the decisions that they made.
And it also wasn't 9 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
and really what resources they had available, because I think that there were other witnesses that they wanted to get and other people they wanted to have testify, but it requires resources,
especially
people
with a
who are,
RICO.
yes,
Trying to
people
do
who
a
are
RICO.
working with those people, because Sean Combs' side was steadily trying to tamper with witnesses and all of that. And then if people have a sense of, hey, he might get acquitted, and even if he isn't acquitted, he still has long enough arms to hurt me or my loved ones. So I don't know what the prosecution was up against. Not having them sequestered, I think, was very problematic. I'm not sure if their concern was it was going to be a very lengthy trial, because remember, initially, Sean Combs' side made it seem like they were going to have this huge rebuttal case, which was definitely going to go beyond July 4th and so on and so forth. So I don't know if there was a concern that we're going to lose jurors because they're going to say, hey, we cannot commit for 3-4 months of our lives.
Right.
But that was just really a ploy by Sean Combs' attorneys, because they did not call any witnesses. Maybe one or two. Yeah. But there wasn't much of a defense. So they had a strategy going. And of course, millions of dollars and lots of attorneys and paralegals and PR people and all of that, in a way that the government was, quite frankly, unmatched. Yeah.
I think that's why the documentary was important, like in terms of the bias and everything, yes. But it was also, critically important to codify some of the conversations, right? Because their team did a really good job at mystifying things and turning things, and reporting things that were happening that were not even happening, in the courtroom. So in the midst of a bunch of lies, it helps to be able to have something, a different picture, a more holistic picture of what we're dealing with. But yeah, part 2. We gotta do a part 2.
There's a part. You think there's gonna be another documentary with 50 Cent's baby mama?
No, I don't think he's gonna let that happen. I mean, I don't think the people who would on behalf of Puffy, who may want that to happen.
You think the children at some point will wake up? Allegedly, maybe wake up.
We don't know that they're
especially Kim Porter's children.
We don't know that they're not awake. They're children. They haven't been given the space to, and most children in that space, in that particular dynamic, are not going to publicly oppose their father. Who is their only
when that's your bread, that's your source to your income at this point,
and your only living parent.
And your only living parent,
and
grandma is there, right, too.
Well, they suing grandma. So this is
suing grandma.
His children purportedly have raised a civil case. A case against her because she's executor of his estate. She's been named, exec, and so there is some legal contestation.
I was not up on that one.
Yeah. So we don't know. Somebody said, the difference is Puffy's children love him. We can't say the same thing for 50 Cent kid. And I'm like, how do you even know that? We don't know what.
Well, I think one of his kids loves him.
At least one. But this is the thing, we don't know.
I don't know. So you think Kim Porter's quote unquote book is gonna come out?
I don't think there's so much more evidence now that ain't even real. Like in terms of there's more conversation, reputable persons like her best friend, like Albie Shore, other persons who knew her very close to her that are opposing its and questioning its authenticity. So I'm gonna just say that. So I don't think, with them having pulled it off of Amazon so quickly, I think Amazon don't even want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So, but I do think that during Keefe D's trial, that it's gonna bring all of this back up. Even though he's now changed his story, allegedly he's innocent, and despite multiple interviews and compensation for those interviews and excitement and bragging in those interviews of him being a part of the actual murder of Tupac, That's going to, and the correspondence with Diddy and the payment and all of this kind of question, it's going to bring all of this back up, for the public imagination. But I don't think that's scheduled.
It was interesting to me that Gene Deal was never asked to testify, because he's been talking a lot.
Well, this is the thing. By doing a RICO case, I just think it was very ambitious of the prosecution to go after Sean Combs under the RICO statute. I think because it requires like 4 different points and categories of things that you have to prove.
Well, they proved at least 2, and I would say the fact that if any of the funds were coming from Bad Boy, if any check or any transfer came from Bad Boy, that ties it. I think that they actually proved RICO. The parts of the trial that I heard.
But when you got Fangirl,
it's up to the jury,
But when you got how they interpret it, and somebody who is they to the clap. So you can't, when you also can't see beyond one relationship and the larger dynamic, structural, dynamics. I don't know how that picture of the larger structural dynamics were
and the fact that this person was drugged the entire time. My God. But we could go on and on.
I know. We hitting.
Hey, y'all, be safe out here, because they are truly demons in flesh walking around.
And some of them at the club, and some of them in the church. So we got to be discerning.
Some of them everywhere.
Some
of them might be in your house. I don't know.
Some of them might be in the mirror. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And you know what? If you find yourself having really thoughts that are deviant, go get help too. Yeah, go get help too. All right, sis. I love you.
I love you too. Take good care.
All right. Bye. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And if you're watching this later, leave your comments.